It's another episode of Grieving Voices, and today my guest is Katie Carroll. She is the coaching. Oh, let me start over!
Yeah. Ah,
Ah!
I love it. I love it. I hear you.
Okay,
I know.
because there was something specific I wanted to say. Okay,
Oh,
what did I say the first time? It was a good intro.
wait, it was. Yeah. I'm trying to remember. I do the same thing
If
on
this
my
is how today goes, we're going to have some fun.
girlfriend. I know.
Make grief fun, right?
Yes.
It's another episode of Grieving Voices, and today my guest is Katie Carroll. She is the coach in Scrubs, and she has been helping people heal from what ails them as a pediatric nurse for the last 21 years. And she is now helping single women learn how to love themselves exactly as they are today so that they can move forward in the direction of their dreams and hopes and goals. Katie is extremely passionate about empowering and educating women on learning how to fill their cups so that they not only pour into others, but so that they can also reap the benefits of having enough in their cups to pour into themselves. When she's not working a 12-hour nursing shift or working in her life coaching business, Katie can be found spending time with her fiance and playing cars, trucks, and transformers with her beloved three nephews. Thank you for being here, Coach and Scrubs.
Oh, thank you, Victoria. Thank you for that beautiful intro. It like gave me chills, like just like hearing someone else say it. It's like that is me.
Oh, it's beautiful. So, what brings you to be the coach in Scrubs? Let's start there.
Mm. Yeah, that's a great question. So I've always loved helping people, and I am the firstborn. I have two younger brothers, and I started babysitting at the age of like 12. And I volunteered in high school at Children's Specialized Hospital, and I've always been in that caregiver role. And so, like you said, I've been a nurse over 21 years now and pediatric nursing. And probably about the first 15 years of my career, I didn't realize that if I don't take care of myself, then I'm no good to others around me. Because in nursing, and I always say this when I'm speaking to nurses, is that, we dive headfirst into the deep end. We go to nursing school, we study, we take the boards, we apply for a job, and then we jump right in. Like we're so excited to have that title of nurse and help, but we don't realize that all of a sudden it's now years later and we have forgotten about ourselves. We have forgotten to take care of ourselves physically, mentally, and emotionally. And so I found myself in the deepest burnout and depression of my life about 6, 7 years ago while working in the pediatric emergency room. And funny enough, I went back to school to become a certified health coach because on the outside, I just wanted to help more people. But that's the hamster wheel that I was on, was that let me go do something else to help more people and get another certification, almost like something of worthiness, so that I could help more people. But what I realized was that I actually went back for myself, that I needed to learn how to help myself, mind, body, spirit. And so when I started my business as a health coach, I called myself Coach in Scrubs because I thought it was cute being a nurse and coaching people. And so it has stuck. And here I am now, still working full time as a pediatric nurse and also building my life coaching business on the side.
I love that. How are most of your clients then other people in healthcare?
It's funny that you say that, Victoria. I did a group coaching program where about half of them were nurses, but of my one-to-one clients, none of them have been nurses. So it's interesting that I do speak to a lot of nurses and I thrive in that community. But my clients, they've been all women, and some have worked in healthcare in some fashion, but most of them were not in healthcare at all.
I've saw an ad not that long ago talking about because nurses, doctors, physicians, people in
Mm,
healthcare are just like everybody else and are prone to the same risks and
mm,
behaviors as everybody else, like addiction with alcohol and opioids and things like that. So I'm interested in learning your perspective on what does is it the burnout that leads to these things, you think? You know, like, because
mm,
in grief recovery we talk about stirbs, and like addictions can be a stirb in order to we resort to these things to feel better for a short period of time, but of course they don't make us feel better. They make us feel shameful and guilt and all these things after, and
mm.
so it perpetuates the cycle of repetition, right? So yeah, what is your perspective on that?
Yeah, I love that question, Victoria, because I've been speaking more about burnout as well. And, when I first started talking about the addictions that maybe can happen, I was embarrassed to talk about all of the wine that I used to drink, a lot of wine. And I think I was embarrassed because you feel like you're showing something to the world, and people may think that then you are less than, or judge you, or shame you. But what I have realized is that we are more alike than we are different, and that other people are suffering. So when I do speak about it now, I know that it could help one other person. And for me, I've never been a big drinker. Like, that's always been the joke, and I never liked beer. I always drank, like a mixed drink at a party. And I always like to be in control. But when I was going through my deepest burnout and depression, I was living alone in my 1 bedroom apartment, and I was single. And I know that we have talked about this before, that my story was that I always thought my life was going to look different. I always thought I was going to be married with a bunch of kids by the time I was 35, 36 years old. I actually mapped it out when we were in nursing school. We did a vision, you know, um, exercise where we saw ourselves. And I've seen myself as a mom since I was a little girl. And when that wasn't happening, I fell deeper into my depression. But the way I coped was drinking. And I found myself going to the liquor store multiple times, during the week to get a bottle of wine or two. And I would come home from my nursing shift. And it's kind of like a joke in the nursing world, or even healthcare. I mean, you even see it on shows like Grey's Anatomy. They all go to the bar at the end of their shift, and they have a drink and they talk about the day. And I would walk into my apartment and I would pour myself a glass of wine. Like, it was my gift to myself, for taking care of people for 12 and a half hours. And I would limit myself to 2 glasses because I didn't want to have a headache the next day, but I usually did. But if I didn't work the next day, maybe I had 3 glasses. And I found that on the days when I wasn't working and I was just out running my errands and doing my things and going to the gym and doing laundry, I poured myself a glass of wine around 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock as I was getting ready for dinner. And looking back now, I realized that that was my way to numb out from the stress of the job, but at the same time, the disappointment in my life. And so I was able to just numb out, drink some wine, watch some TV, and not be present with what was actually going on in my life and what I could possibly do to start to change things and better myself. And so, as I have shared my story more, I have had other nurses and healthcare providers open up about similar addictions. And whether it's, like you said, it could be alcohol, drugs, it could be sex, it could be spending money, just going to the store, spending money to feel better in the moment. It could be gambling, but we find ways to numb out so that we don't have to deal with the pain of what we see and smell and hear and do in our daily jobs.
I'm so glad that this came up because I think it's in the culture. It's
Mm,
embedded in the culture. There is a wine culture, right? And even with
yes.
moms, the mom wine culture.
Yes.
It's so because motherhood is can be can burn you out too,
Mm,
if you're not taking care of
yeah.
yourself, if you're not filling your cup, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that was me. That was
Mm,
me too. I wore a bunch of hats at one time and I had no balance in my life and I was burning out as well. And really, the underlying current was grief, unprocessed and undealt with grief.
yeah.
And so, can you share more about your and this vision that you had for yourself
Mm.
and how that's transformed and changed over time?
Yeah, I feel like, okay, get the tissues for myself because I know, but when I share it, I love sharing my story now because I know it will help people. But like, first and foremost, it has helped me to share my story. And when you just said like the undercurrent was grief, that is so what I was living in. So when I was a little girl, I used to play this game with my mom where I would walk into the kitchen with one of my doll babies. And I was maybe 5, 6, 7 years old. And we played this game where she would call me Mary. I don't even know where that name came from. And I would walk into the kitchen and she would say, Mary, how are you? I haven't seen you in years. And we were like friends. And she would say, how many children do you have now? And I would have one or two or three dolls with me. And I would say, I just had my third. And she would say, oh my goodness, I have three children. What are their names? And this went on for a couple years. And I was 2 years old when my first brother was born. And then I was 6 years old when my second brother was born. And when my second brother was born, I would carry him around the house like he was one of my dolls. And I had younger cousins. And so I was always kind of playing with the kids. And then, like I said, I started babysitting at age 12. And I just always pictured myself as a mom. And I would hear people say, you're going to be a great mom, and I would say, yes, I know. And I can't wait for that day. And so I went to nursing school. And like I said, we did a vision exercise at the end of our last year, a couple weeks before graduation. And it said, where do you picture yourself in 5 years? And I immediately wrote it out. I'm 27 years old. I'm a pediatric nurse practitioner at the Children's Hospital in Philadelphia, and I'm married with twins. Boom. I mean, there was no question in my mind, Victoria, that that was going to be the life that I was going to lead. I had no idea that believing that that was my path, I was also believing that if it didn't happen, then something must be wrong. I never thought that it would look any different. And so I went into my 20s and I lived with a friend and I did all the things and I went out and had great times. But I was constantly thinking, when is it going to happen? When is it going to happen? And if I would meet a guy and go on a date, in my head, I immediately put my name with his last name. I immediately thought, is this going to work? Does he want kids? And I'm sure I pushed away so many men because of that, or even sabotaged relationships because of that. And as I turned 30 years old and I was very single and I was a traveling nurse and I traveled to Philadelphia. Funny enough, I was a traveling nurse at CHOP at 30 years old, but I was single with no kids. And then I traveled to San Diego and then to Boston and then back to New Jersey. And I feel like I was like looking for my husband. I was looking for that answer. And as I turned 30 and then 31, 32, 33, 34, I was the maid of honor in a bunch of weddings. I was named godmother to some of my best friends' children. My younger brothers were getting married, having kids. And everybody would say, your time will come. But I knew that getting older for me, for having a child, that clock was ticking. And when I was I guess it was around 36 years old, 37 years old. And that's when I fell into my deepest depression, was that I would lay my head on the pillow at night and cry because I actually pictured my own wake. And I pictured myself really old. Like, I'm like, oh, girl, you're going to live a long time, like, 90 years old. But I pictured people peering into my coffin and whispering about me, saying things like, did she ever get married? Did she ever have children? Does she have family here? And in those moments, I related not ever getting married, not ever having children with an unworthy life. And that I would have spent all this time here and then never made an impact, never left a legacy. And so when I think about those times, I think that, I had no idea of how to get out of how I was thinking. I was so deep in it, and the burnout was real. And I said I was burnt out at work, but I was really burnt out in my life, and drinking and spending money, but still saying yes to everybody and being a people pleaser because I was working so hard so that people wouldn't realize that on the inside, my soul was slowly dying. I was in the best physical shape of my life. And people would say, you're in amazing shape. You have great arms, you have great legs, all of those things. I worked out 3-4 days a week, every week for years, because I was protecting the inside, unbeknownst to me, that maybe if I looked perfect on the outside, that nobody would know on the inside the mess that was happening in my heart, in my mind. And when I look back to that time, Victoria, I don't I don't know how I knew how to move forward. I just know that I had an incident while working in the pediatric emergency room with one of my patients where he tried to harm himself under my watch and my clock. And something that night in me just broke. And I remember saying to my mom 3 words that I'll never forget. I said, I don't care. I don't care if I get in trouble at work. I don't care. My patient was fine and safe, but all the other things I just didn't care about. I don't care if I get in trouble, if my boss yells at me, if I lose my job. And my mom said to me that night, Kate, this doesn't sound like you, and this hasn't sounded like you in a really long time. Something has to change within you. Because I was looking at the outside world to change. I wanted people to change around me. I wanted work to change, my coworkers, my patients. I wanted Mr. Right to walk into my life. And it was in that moment that I just started to realize that I needed to start taking some responsibility for myself and my actions and my happiness if I wanted to start living, because I felt like I wasn't living. I was waiting. I was waiting for so long for all these things to show up, and I was missing out on the things that were happening in my life. And so that kind of started my journey of learning how to love myself and learning how to show up for myself and truly learning how to fill up my cup so that I could show up for myself and this world in all of the ways that I was meant to.
Sending you a hug. You moved me to tears. Um, I just felt your pain in your words. And they say that there's something called, I had a podcast guest say not that long ago, she had lost her child after birth within hours. And she said she'd wake up in the middle of the night with empty arms syndrome.
Mm,
And it just made me think of what you shared, like this empty arms syndrome that just
mm,
doesn't go away, that you never got to experience, you know.
mm, mm.
Um, and I'm gonna ask a question that maybe a lot of listeners may be wondering.
Right.
Um, had you ever considered just being a single mom and finding a way for that for yourself?
That's a great question, Victoria, because a lot of people have asked me over the years. I was dating someone between like 33 and 35 years old who I thought, I would marry and have kids with. Um, Even though, there were some things in the relationship, that I wasn't sure, but it was one of those like, well, we're at the age and we talked about it, but some family situations happened for his family, and ultimately we ended up breaking up when we were 35 years old. We were the same age, and people started saying, then why don't you freeze your eggs, why don't you, or think about being a single mom. And for me, I was still holding on to that dream that it would be with a man, that I would meet someone and that it would happen. um And then I started dating someone else when I was just turning 40, almost 39, almost 40. Um, but he was much older than me. So I wasn't sure again if that would happen, but we loved each other and cared about each other, and we're kind of moving maybe towards that and maybe doing some type of fertility. But again, it didn't get to that point and we ended our relationship. So then I found myself at 42, um, totally single, and wondering, should I do the thing, should I go and do the fertility on my own. And actually, I have two women in my life who did it on their own, who are about my age. And one of them has two children on her own, and the other one has one child on her own. And I started weighing do I want to go through all of that myself and do all of the medications and the treatments? And I respect everybody's opinion and belief on this. And my personal belief was that I didn't want to take all of that medication and do all of the medication. And so then that was kind of the answer. Well, then it's not going to happen if you're not going to do it that way. And also the money to be put into it. I didn't have the money to put into it, although I know people say that you can find a way. And so, I was in this place of, well, I don't know then if it'll happen. And people will say to you like, oh, my aunt got married when she was 45 and they had two kids after, and maybe they did fertility or maybe not. And so, for me, feeling like I was on this quest for my worthiness or my purpose in this world, during those years, my first nephew was born. I feel like I could cry again, but my first nephew was born 5.5 years ago. And it's like when he was placed in my arms, I'm like, oh, this is what it's all about. I knew I would love him. I just never knew how much. And so that started helping me realize that, like, you know what, I can still have an impact in this world and love and share my love and fill my arms, like you said, with my nephews. And then my second nephew was born 3 years ago, and my third one was born 2 years ago. And through them, I have found such a purpose with, sharing the love, because I think that's what it is, Victoria, too, is that I knew I had so much love in me that it hurt not to give it out to people. I mean, I give it to my family and my friends, but like to really just pour it out, And I found through my nephews, I'm able to like pour so much love, into them and think about, their lives and their futures and just being a part of it. And then, almost 2 years ago, I rejoined Match.com at the advice of a friend when I had sworn I would never ever do it again, because I did it for years. I went on a lot of dates. I dated a lot of guys. There was some good, there was a lot of bad. There was, feeling not good enough, and people judge you by your picture and your age. And I had sworn to never ever do it again, and I hadn't done it in years. And one of my coworkers said, just try. And I joined on a Friday night. And the next day there was an email from a guy named Peter. And we started emailing that day, that Saturday. And he called me the next day, Sunday. And he picked me up on Tuesday for our first date. And that was it. And we moved in together April 1st, 2020, at the beginning of a pandemic, which was a great time to have a nurse move in with you. And we got engaged in November in Aruba. And we're getting married next month, August 6th, our 2-year anniversary of going on our first date.
Oh, I just got chill bumps.
I'm sorry for all the crying, but I feel like it's just, coming out. Everything's coming out. And it's just, it's when people say, like, maybe that wasn't your time. You don't want to hear that during that time. I didn't want to hear that. I didn't want to hear people's stories about their aunt that met someone when they were 45 and had kids, because I thought, but my story was supposed to be different. And when I started my coaching, I wasn't sure who I truly want to help or how I want to help them. But in helping single women, which is part of what I do, is that, there may be someone out there in this world who shares a similar story. And I'm so happy that I had the support around me, and the, maybe the incident in the emergency room that was kind of like my awakening of starting to make small changes in my life, and ultimately never giving up hope, even though there were some really, really dark times. Because with the birth of my nephews and then meeting Peter, people are still asking me, are you guys going to have kids? And I'm 44 years old now. He's 52. And I can honestly tell you, Victoria, that if it happens, it happens. And we have talked about it, and we will be fine with it and overjoyed. But if it doesn't happen, I'm okay with that, because I know that my purpose and my worth really isn't tied to me birthing a child, and that there's so much in this life to be thankful for, and that I'm so, lucky and feel so grateful that I have both my parents, I have my siblings, my sisters-in-law, my nephews, my fiance, and we are just so excited to share our life together and do all of the things that I always dreamed about doing with that person, and it didn't happen in the timing that I thought it would, but if we had met 20 years ago, who knows what would have happened? Or if we had met 10 years ago, or even, 5 years ago, that it was truly all in due timing. And, they always say, like, if you want to make God laugh, tell him your plans. I mean, he was probably thinking, Katie, I know you want this, but some things have to happen first, and I want you to learn this lesson or that lesson, and it will come. And I always say, like, Peter was worth the wait. I mean, he was so worth the wait. Every day I pull into my driveway and I smile when I just know I'm going to walk into the house and see him. And now it's almost, I'll never forget my life at all in all of those years, but it's it's a gift to be able to look back at that version of me that was trying so hard. And I love her, and I want to send her love and just say, like, you were doing like the best that you could at that time, and thank you for staying strong, because I wouldn't be here today if that version of me didn't stay strong.
What comes across in your words is gratitude. I just feel it is so much gratitude. And I think as a mother, and I've birthed three children, you take it for granted. Like, and there was a point in my life, my early 20s, I didn't want kids. Like, I
Mm,
actually said that. I didn't want kids. I think because my experience growing up, I thought it was a cruel world,
mm,
and I didn't have trust. And I thought, gosh, I don't want to bring a child into this,
mm.
this misery in a way. Um, but, when you meet someone too that flips your life upside down in a positive way, and you have moments that awaken you,
Yes.
right, and change the trajectory of your life, things change. And that's what happened for me too. But what were some of the unhelpful or hurtful things that you heard during that time? Because I
Mm,
imagine there was a lot.
there was, you know, I heard a lot that it just wasn't my time yet. And that, that hurts, because it seemed to be happening for everybody else. And so when it's not happening for you, but you look around at your siblings and it's happening for them and they're younger. It's happening for my best friends that I've been best friends with since 6th grade, and all around the same time. Actually, three of my very best friends from 6th grade got married within 5 weeks of each other. It was just about 5 weeks. Three of my very best friends, I was the maid of honor in two of the weddings and in all the wedding parties. And within 5 weeks, they all got married. I mean, it was like, talk about, the bridal showers and the bachelorettes and then the weddings. I mean, it was boom, 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 and so I feel like every birthday I would hear, this is going to be the year. People say that this is going to be the year. I feel it. Good things are going to happen. And you want to feel that way, right? Like, another year, this is going to be great. And then when it didn't happen, it was this unbelievable, like, disappointment, and also feeling like, what am I doing wrong? What is wrong with me? And I think that was probably the biggest thing, Victoria, was that, what is wrong with me? I feel like at the core, I am a good human being. I'm a pediatric nurse. I'm a good person. I was always a good student. And that was the other thing, right? Like, doing all the right things. Like, I was an AB student in high school. I was very good. I'm such a rule follower. I applied to 9 colleges and I got into all 9, and my father was just telling someone the story the other day. And I went to a great nursing school and I graduated and I passed the boards on my first attempt, and I got the first job I interviewed for. And I felt like I was doing everything right. And I think then I would sit there and think, like, well, there must be something. Like, I'm definitely, it must be, I must not be pretty enough or thin enough or smart enough or funny enough. Like, there has to be something wrong, because it happens for the majority of people. And so I think, I don't know what people could have said to make it better, but I know that, saying, well, it's not your time, or, I mean, some people would say, very brazen to say, maybe that's not your path. Every once in a while, someone would say that, and I did not want to hear that, and they would say, like, look at your life. You have a beautiful life. You're healthy and well and a great job and family and friends. But it's like, but it's not enough is really what I wanted to say. But you never want to say that because you don't want people to think you're ungrateful, and I have a friend who's my age. Well, she just turned 44 and she's single, never married, no kids. She has a younger sister who's married with 2 kids. And she feels the same way about her niece and nephew that I feel about my nephews. But at her sister's baby shower, an aunt said to her, "This must be really hard for you." And so, even though I'm sure people don't mean to hurt your feelings, saying things that, like, this must be really hard for you, or, I think one of the other things is, like you said, my mom would run into a friend, or like one of my high school friends' moms, she would run into her, over Christmas at church. And my mom would say, "Oh, Mrs. So and so said, how's Katie? Has she found anyone special yet?" And my mom would say, "No, she hasn't." So it was almost this pressure, like, not only do good in the world and get a job and make money and be self-sufficient and take care of yourself and make everyone around you happy, but like also like try to find that husband and try to have those kids and that house. And, so the pressure I think that is put on us as a society, because that's just how it's been for years and years and years, is that, a man and woman, I mean, in today's world, everything is very different and beautiful, and who, man, woman, woman, whatever it may be. But that, like, a woman, her job was to, find a partner, build a home, birth the children, take care of the children, take care of the home. And now many women work, outside the home, in the home, but still doing all those things. And if you're not, you're almost looked at like, "Oh, what's," they want to almost say to you, like, "What's wrong?" And I actually, one time I was working during that time, during the peds emergency room years, and I was working with a male nurse who was per diem, like he wasn't full time with us. He was just there like every now and then. And I was approaching the nurse's station and his back was to me. And he was like around my age, and he was married with kids, and he didn't know I was standing there. And I heard him say to someone else, "What's up with Katie, man? She's hot, like she's a nurse, like she's got a good job, like she seems pretty smart, but like she's single, like she's never married, like doesn't have any kids." Like, and then he said, "What is she, crazy?" So then that thought comes in your head, like, I guess something's wrong with me mentally. Maybe there is something wrong, And so all of these messages that are sent to us left me feeling like it's definitely me. I've done something wrong, or I'm doing something wrong, and I'm not doing enough. And so at the end of the day, it's my fault that it's not happening.
So was it the moment your nephew was born that the switch flipped to understanding that really it was self-love that was missing for you? And can you take us back to your childhood and where maybe that stems from?
Mm, yeah, that's a great question, because I feel like, as an adult, I feel like I can look back to so many things, and we may not think that it's affecting us now, 44 years later. But yes, with my nephew Liam, when he was born, and he was born premature, he was 5 weeks early, and he was in the NICU for 25 days, but we were able to visit, all the time. But like, I was saying, when I was holding him and just looking down at his little face, and the love I felt for him, it, I guess I started to realize like it was an extension of me. and like truly an extension of me. This is my brother's son. And the, I guess like the way that I was able to show up for him and my family, and a lot of people would say, Katie, if you were married with kids, your relationship would be very different, probably with your nephews, just in a different way, because you would be, in your world with your kids and everything. And I do think about that sometimes too, that, it still would have been very special, but different, because I was able to step in as the aunt, who doesn't have kids, who's able to babysit and do the things and be with them. And I think, like you said, I started to realize that, I hadn't been loving myself. And when I would look at his face and think about like his life and being there for him, it was all of a sudden like, I have to take care of myself so that I can be here for him and his life, and then with the births of my second and third nephews, wanting to be there, for all of the wonderful moments in their life. And so when I think about my childhood, and it's hard, Victoria, because you think like I had a great childhood. Like, thanks be to God, like, I never had any trauma, like abuse, like in those regards. When you hear some people's stories, like my mom was a stay-at-home mom and my dad worked in the city and he was home every night at 6 p.m. for dinner. And, we went, we lived in a great town. We went on vacations. Um, but when I think about, did I love myself? I guess I never thought about it like that. I thought I'm surrounded with love, so much love, but I don't think that I was loving myself. And I think, you know, and I've told this story a couple of times when I talk about, being a perfectionist and living that people pleaser life, that my father, he used to yell a lot, especially at my brothers. Like I was rarely yelled at, but I think it was because I was like such a goody goody. And I don't know if that was like the firstborn, but my brothers, I mean, they're boys. Like I see it with my nephews. They were constantly wrestling and physical and everything. And my father would yell. And when my father yelled, the house shook and I cried. Meanwhile, I wasn't the one being yelled at. But I learned at an early age that I didn't want my dad to yell like at me. So I tried really, really hard to be perfect and the people pleaser to not upset him. And here I am at 44 years old, and I can honestly say that I still try to please my dad. He doesn't yell like he used to, right? I mean, we're all adults now. I mean, but it's that thought that I don't want to upset him. And what if I upset him? Not that he'll yell, but maybe he'll say something, will it hurt my feelings? Um, and so I think that maybe I was working so hard on being perfect that when you're working that hard on being perfect, like you're beating yourself up all the time because, like we all know, nobody's perfect and nothing is perfect. But when you're striving for it and you're not hitting it because it's not realistic, it's a constant knockdown of yourself, beating yourself up, the negative self talk. So I realize now that I was living for decades striving for something that was not realistic, never hitting it because I never was going to. And in the process, just beating myself up. I remember putting out a post recently that said I was in an abusive relationship, dot, dot, dot. And of course, that got so many people's attention. Like, what? And I said, with myself.
With yourself. Yeah. Yeah. How many of us are, right?
Right.
Oh, such a good point. Um, so do you see when you look back now, do you see how that kind of translated into your relationships with men?
Yes, I totally do because I, I there were no boundaries with them. And like I said, working as a nurse, I've worked 3 days a week for, over 21 years. And so if I met a guy that lived, 40 minutes from me, 45 minutes, and we would maybe plan a dinner for Thursday night, I would always say, I can drive. I can drive to your house. It's okay. I'm off tomorrow. I'm a nurse, and I would constantly give them an out. And I remember one time my cousin saying to me, she's 5 years older. She's always been like a role model in my life. She said to me, why isn't he driving to you? And at the time, it was someone that lived in an area in Hoboken. He didn't have a car. He took the train everywhere. And I said, well, he doesn't have a car. And it's okay. And my cousin said, he can take the train to where you live. And so I see now that I was constantly trying to please them, and even physically, right? Thinking that, if we have sex earlier than not, maybe he'll like me more. And then maybe I'll get closer to that goal of getting married and having the kids. And then when it didn't work out, thinking, was it because I had sex too early? Was it because, I didn't do X, Y, or Z, the constant beating myself up again, not realizing that, I only realized, I should say, that I am like fully myself with Peter. When I met Peter, I think because we met at a later stage in life, that, you know, we both came to the table with, this is me, this is who I am. I was 42, he was 50, and this is who we are. And, I liken it to, I say, it's like the, Ferris wheel at an amusement park that's been going, right? And like Peter and I jumped on, and I had 42 years under me and he had 50 years. And we're like, let's see if we can make this work. We like being together. We're attracted to each other. Like, we have so much other stuff in our life that it was hard to not be who we are, because this is me, this is who I am, this is what I do for a living, this is my family, these are the things that are important to me. And then the same for him. And, that's when I feel like you truly know you've met your person, when you feel like you're not putting up any facades, and it works, and now when I look back to all those years of dating, I think I was not me. I mean, even when someone says like, where do you want to go to dinner? And it was always, wherever you want to go. Right. Meanwhile, I'm like, oh, I really want sushi or Italian or Indian food or something, but when you meet that person that you're totally, yourself with, and it's like, where do you want to go to dinner? Do you want to go to Italian? I'm not really feeling Italian tonight. It might be too heavy on my stomach. Can we go do something else like sushi or Indian or, and you just find that you are being you. And then it's so easy because you're not trying to be somebody else. And when I look back to those times, like, that's why I think it was so hard. And that's why I think I struggled and, self-sabotaged and had so many disappointments. I had all these expectations, but I was like working so hard. I wasn't being who I truly am, what truly made me happy. I was just on this mission. I was just on a path to meet a man and get married and have kids. I thought that was like the ultimate goal. I was in this race against time, and then I met Peter, and it was like, why does this seem so easy? Because I think, and I don't know if it's something that comes with age, but we were both at points where like, this is me, take it or leave it. I think I had built up my confidence also in doing the work on myself the years leading up to meeting him, that I knew what I wouldn't stand for, what I would stand for, what made me happy. And I was already feeling fulfilled and with a purpose with my nephews and my family and my life. I was feeling very, worthy
And at
of my
peace.
life and at peace. Yes. Yes.
Peace inside, peace out.
Yes. Oh my gosh, Victoria, so much. And that, you remind me of, I was working with a life coach like around that time roughly, and he would always say, what do you want in this life? And peace was my number one answer. I wanted peace in my mind and my heart. I didn't know how to get there, what it would look like, but I knew that I was at unrest. Like I was at such a place of just feeling like disheveled on the inside, like frantic and depressed and anxious, and I wanted peace because I knew that would be the opposite of how I was feeling. Living like that was unenjoyable. And that's why, again, the numbing out, the drinking, the spending money so that I didn't have to sit with the way I was feeling.
Emotional dis-ease.
Mm.
Yeah, that's what I say in grief recovery. Yeah.
Yes.
And when you were talking about just coming to the table and being who you are, it's being able to cut the BS, right? It's
Mm.
like there's no, like you said, there's no pretending, there's no facade, you're able to to just be and speak your soul.
Mm. Yeah,
I love that.
I love that too.
So throughout your experience, what has given you the most joy and hope for your future?
Mm. I feel like I could get emotional again thinking about it because it's such a happy thought now. Um, just living my life, being grateful for the day to day. Like I said, when I pull into my driveway at night and I smile, thinking I know I'm going to walk in the house and see my fiance, and when we go out to dinner and just enjoy a good meal together, and when I see my family and we just get to celebrate life together, and being with my nephews, and also being at work. I left the pediatric emergency room and now I work in a pediatric same day surgery unit. And knowing that I was put here for a purpose, and that purpose is to share my love and to spread my love. And that has looked like being a pediatric nurse for 21 years. And it has looked like being a daughter and a sister and an aunt and now a fiance. And that at the end of the day, I feel whole and worthy and fulfilled knowing that I'm doing exactly what I was meant to do in this world. And it feels so right. It just pours out of me. It's who I am. And I'm able to, you know, go to bed at night feeling peaceful, feeling fulfilled, that I'm living the life that was always there, but I chose to look the other way for a really long time.
I was going to say, don't you think it's kind of ironic that you chose peds
Yes.
or peds chose you? And if you think about it, like I'm sure there's plenty of nurses who have children at home and who are maybe even burned out at home.
Mm.
So then they come to work and they're burned out. And are you really able to serve those children then
Mm.
when you're burned out at home?
Mm.
And so you bring a gift to those kids of really being
Yeah.
able to be present with them
Yeah.
because you don't have that burnout at home.
Right. I never thought about it that way too. I love that. Mm.
So, is there anything else you'd like to share?
Oh, this was awesome, Victoria. Thank you. I just feel so grateful for you allowing me to share my story here and be me and be vulnerable. And, just I love to share the message that you are enough. You were born enough. You've always been enough. And now is the time to start believing it. That's what I say to my clients, to the world. And I feel like if we can start to embrace that a little bit each day, then the happiness that we're looking for in life, the peace, will start to uncover itself because it's there.
I love that. I love that.
Oh,
It's beautiful.
thank you.
Where can people find you if they want to reach out to you?
Oh, thank you so much for asking. You can find me actually at my name, Katie Carroll. It's KatieCarroll. KatieCarrollCoaching.com is my website. And then you can find me on Instagram and Facebook at Katie Carroll Coaching. I have a Facebook group, Katie Carroll Coaching, and I'm also on LinkedIn. And those are the place I love Facebook. I love Instagram. And you can go to my website, to schedule a free discovery call with me. You could send me a message on any of the social platforms. I would be honored to connect with anybody that would like to connect.
Are you currently taking clients?
I am. Thank you for asking. I definitely am in my one-to-one coaching program. So I would be honored. I always say I'd be honored to walk alongside anybody on their journey in this life, because sometimes we need that person to just walk lovingly alongside of us as we navigate this crazy beautiful world.
Right. Is your name changing in your branding and
Oh,
business?
wow, you know what, that's a good question. I mean, we talk about the name changing, and today we were doing stuff with the marriage license, so that's interesting. Yeah, it's funny, Victoria, because I've always been KDM Carroll RN, as a nurse, and KMCRN. I mean, I've been writing that for 21 years, and people are saying at work, are you going to change your name? And so we haven't decided yet if I'm going to hyphenate it or change it. Um, so that you're right. Now that I think about it, I'm Katie Carroll Coaching everywhere. So I'll have to ask Peter if he wants to take my name.
Yeah, right? Yeah, why is it that we have to change our name, right?
Right. But I dreamed, right, for so long, like I said, of changing my name. And now
Yeah.
all of a sudden I'm like, oh, I'm
Oh,
branded like Katie Carroll
yeah.
Coaching.
Is that well, isn't that funny? Like it's funny but not funny. Like it's
Right.
really ironic. Like it's something
Right.
you wanted so badly and like here now it's coming and it's like
Mm,
maybe I want to keep my name.
right. Right. I know. That is
Like
very interesting.
you could always hyphenate and just keep your business as it
True.
is too.
You're right. You're right. Keep
It
that
doesn't have
name.
to be either or. It can
Right.
be and.
Mm. Yes, I love that.
All right. Anything else?
I think that's it. Thank you so much, Victoria. This was amazing. I always feel like so at peace talking to you. So thank
Oh,
you.
thank you for that. And thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you so much.
And remember, when you unleash your heart, you unleash your life. Much love.